Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to our DAT prep event. Super excited for you guys to be here. We have our guest speaker, Jeremiah, who is actually a fourth year dental student, who's just going to talk about how he prepared for dental school and the DAT and kind of just his experience being a dental student. So if you guys haven't already yet, please fill out that attendance form for us. And yeah, Jeremiah, if you want to introduce yourself and take the stage, go ahead.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Jeremiah. Currently a third year dental student, so I think maybe there was a miscommunication with David or whatever, but which is probably good for this event because I'm a little bit closer to the DAT at least. But I'm originally from Central Illinois and then came to Iowa for undergrad and then got lucky and get to stay for dental school. So, I made like a little PowerPoint to kind of walk through things. And it's mostly geared towards the DAT, but if you have any questions about dental school or I guess anything like pre-health related, um, you know, please feel free to ask. And also feel free to interrupt me. I don't know if I'll be able to see the chat. So um, yeah, just feel free to jump in whenever. All right, the DAT. So before we kind of talked about like what studying looks like for it. Thought it'd be kind of helpful to kind of get in like the time frame of like when you would be studying for it. So this is partly some stuff my advisor told me at Iowa. Just kind of like your first year, don't feel like you have to jump into everything right away. Mostly just get used to the college coursework and kind of begin to explore your interests. And then your second year, you can kind of increase your commitments. Maybe, you know, pick a couple that you want to be more involved in. Get some leadership. Um, experience. And then second year would also probably be a good time to begin shadowing. And then third year during your fall and then also the winter would probably be when you could start studying and take the exam. Really, you could do it earlier or later. It doesn't really matter, but I think this is kind of the typical way. And then third year spring, that way you can start working on the other aspects of your application, like your letters, your personal statement, and then put networking, just kind of getting an idea of where you'd like to go to dental school. Maybe your dentist back home could help you get into school closer to home. Um, just, yeah, don't be afraid to ask for favors from people. A lot of people are very willing to help. So then your fourth year in the fall, you would have your interviews, and then hopefully December 15th, you'd be able to accept your admissions offer. So this top one is what I did. Basically, I had a friend convince me to apply early since you don't need a bachelor's degree to matriculate into dental school. The requirement is 90 semester hours of completed coursework. So some schools are a little bit more strict on that. I would say, from my experience, Iowa, I mean, it's how I got in, so I don't think it's as big of a deal at Iowa. But like I know Marquette is more particular about like having a degree. But if you wanted to do it after 90 semester hours, I pretty much did everything over the summer after my second year. So, like in the spring semester, I kind of had an idea of who I'd want to write letters or recommendations for me. And then the summer was nice because I wasn't doing coursework, so I could just focus on the DAT. Um, so I worked in the hospital in the mornings, like got good experience, and then took the DAT or studied for the DAT during the afternoons. And then I took the DAT, and then after the DAT, I finished up the rest of my application to submit. And then, yeah, fall interviews. The other, I mean, non-traditional way, which you'll find a lot of people do this anyways, or sorry, not anyways. It's not like negative, but um, just kind of a path I didn't really realize is possible. But taking a gap year, the benefit of this is that you can delay your DAT until after your fourth year. But I think the important part that I've heard from people is still showing that you can handle a heavy load. So like, if you take a gap year, it's important to show that you're still committed um, to, yeah, being a student or getting more involved in dentistry. And granted, that can look different for everyone, but just kind of something to keep in mind. So the DAT covers some of the natural sciences. So there's biology, Gen Chem, OChem, and then I listed the like Iowa courses next to it. Um, so it could be helpful to definitely have these completed at Iowa before you take the DAT. That way you've already seen it once. But I did have a friend that took the DAT before she took OChem 2, and she was able to self-teach it. Um, so it's still an option if you're on a time crunch. And then there's reading comprehension, which is kind of like the SAT where you just get reading passages to go through, answer comprehension questions based on that. The quantitative reasoning is all the math problems. So I wouldn't say there's like a specific class to take for that. Like a biostats course would be helpful, or just some sort of college algebra. And then the last one is the perceptual ability, which is basically like doing a bunch of like puzzles in your head. So they could show you like this graphic with a bunch of cubes stacked on top of each other, and it could say like how many exposed sides of the cubes are there. And you'd have to be able to, you could count some of them that you could see, but then you'd also have to know in your head based off what the pattern looks like, how many are on the reverse side that you can't see, or on the side like kind of facing away from you. So just different kind of little puzzles and games like that. Unlike the MCAT, there's no physics on the DAT, which is nice if you don't like physics. Um, but yeah, so studying resources. I don't know how much everyone's kind of looked into this yet, but um, it's an additional cost, obviously, to undergrad and your application fees. But in my opinion, it's worth it. Um, if you think of like the salary cap that you could have as a dentist, paying an extra couple $100s for a study resource to get you into dental school is worth it. Also, from a time standpoint wise, if you can pay a couple $100s now and lower your chances of needing to retake the exam, in my opinion, and that's worth it. There's a lot of time and more importantly, stress. Um, so I would try not to get too discouraged by the cost. Obviously, I know everyone's in a different situation, but um, I think they're heavily worth it. So I use DAT Bootcamp pretty much exclusively. That's one of the more expensive ones, but it's also the only resource that you would really need to use. And they've got great content, great practice questions, and then like great customer service if you ever needed anything. I know some people use Booster, and then if you like, if there's a specific instructor through DAT, like the OChem guy, if you don't get what he's saying, then maybe a separate resource like these videos could help. Um, and then I think if anyone adds on to boot camp, it's usually something for the perceptual abilities practice, just to kind of see problems differently or hear someone explain them differently. And then there's also like Math Destroyer for the math section. So, like I said, I thought um, the boot camp was a great program. Um, they have a lot of structure if that's what you're looking for. So, like this, I just took a screenshot of their, I think it's 10 weeks of study, and it goes through every video and every question. So you're not really going to be missing anything. So they have like the calendar view, so you can kind of plan out your week, and then they also have their day by day with just a little bit extra. And as you can see, it's got like read or like reread, rewatch. So it kind of builds in like going back and reviewing what you learned previously, which I thought was really nice. And then obviously, like as I looked at the calendar, like I felt pretty good about quantitative reasoning. So anything there I would kind of skip um, and just kind of go back to like biology or OChem. So just kind of thinking for my general tips, I would say I would really strongly recommend learn the material now while you're in Foundations of Bio. even though it's a pain. Um, but if you can learn it well now, it makes it that much easier when you go to start studying again. And I think a big way to do that would be start studying for your exams early out. Like if you can do a week, but at least, starting to see the content again before the exam. I think that's been really helpful for like long term, especially um, now in dental school too. It's the same thing. Like the earlier I start studying for a test, the easier it is for me to remember the information afterwards. And like I know cramming sometimes it's very important to just get the grade, but if you can avoid it, I would highly recommend. And then next I just talk about like self-assessing throughout. Like some people are going to really struggle with the biology sections and maybe don't. So don't feel like you need to spend just as much time on bio because yes, there is a lot of content, but if you know it well, then you know, don't worry about feeling like you need to complete every practice problem. Ultimately, like there's a lot of content, so you're going to be up against time to some extent. So you're going to want to kind of be smart in how you pick and choose what you spend your time on. So, like the first thing I put is like which topics can you pick up more quickly to boost your score? So um like Gen Chem, I felt like there's just a lot of rules that I didn't quite remember well, and I can kind of consistently got those questions wrong. But OChem was a little bit fresher in my head, so um I just kind of made more of a point to like really get a good score on the OChem. Obviously, I don't want to like leave any like huge holes, but um with the way the scoring works, I try to like figure out what would be the quickest way to add points to my score. Which I guess I should explain too. The scoring, um, it's kind of like it's on a bell curve. So like there's a wide number of questions that you can miss and still get anywhere between like an 18 and a 22, say. Like someone that gets a 22 could have a much higher percentage correct than someone that's getting an 18, even though score-wise they look pretty similar. But if you can get up past those couple ranges, it's like every question is kind of worth more. So like for me, for the quantitative reasoning, I knew I was close to getting like a pretty good score on that. And if I could just nail down their rules, then my quantitative reasoning score could go way up quicker than like a biology score. Because my biology, I would have to review a lot more just different random facts to be able to get a couple more percentage right. But because I was kind of already in the middle of the curve, it didn't really change my score quite as much. So I hope that makes sense. But if you can just try to like strategize, what you can pick up quickly, what adds to your score quickly. And then the other thing is like certain topics are just going to be low yield on the exam. And it's kind of hard to get a gauge for that if you haven't done practice questions. But once you start doing the practice questions, you can kind of get an idea of like if they're going to ask me a question about like different like taxonomy classifications, like if they're asking you a question, it might only, usually it's about these five, as opposed to knowing like the nitty-gritty details of each kind of classification. So just kind of again that pattern recognition as you're going through the questions, realizing like what are they getting at, what do they typically look for, and then like adjusting your study so that you're not going too into depth on certain things. All right. The next one, which I wish I would have done, was the PAT problems. Trying to get them in at least daily if you can. Um, that was one of the harder sections for me. And I think it's like we don't take any classes in undergrad to really prepare for it. So it took me a while to kind of pick up. And I think if I would have started and just been more consistent with doing the questions daily, it would have been really good for my brain and just being able to sleep on it each night and just kind of get used to seeing the patterns that they test for those. Um, I was I was more worried about covering all the content, and I was like, patterns I can just pick up. Like it's just games, but honestly, like I think that takes the most brain training besides like just memorizing. So, um, if you can always finish off your studying session with some of those PAT questions, it's probably a good idea. That was also the section I was the most rushed for time on. So I think the first like practice exam I did, I only got through 50% of the questions. And it's really hard to get a good score if you guess on 50% of the questions. So um, I think doing daily would just kind of help build up a routine for that. I don't know if anyone uses Anki flashcards for their undergrad courses, but I would highly recommend for like large tests like this. Um, DAT boot camp, and I'm sure a lot of the other ones you could just Google like Anki flashcards. They're already pre-made. You just download them. In Anki's program you can get on your computer. There is a little bit of a learning curve, but you just watch like one or two YouTube videos, figure it out. And then Anki's great because it will bring the flashcard up again in like a scheduled number of days. And you can pick once you see the card, if it was easy for you, you hit the easy button and you don't see it for much longer. Or if it was, something you kind of had to really search for and try to think of, you can put hard, and then you'll see that card more often. And it's great because it'll just kind of keep refreshing the cards every day. So you don't need to be like look through all your topics and be like, oh yeah, I was really weak on this one. If you do the Anki cards, it's just already there for you to kind of flip through and um, learn that way. I would really recommend having a routine. So, like I was saying, when I took it, I would study or I would work in the mornings. I'd go eat lunch and then go to the library and study for 3, 4 hours um, daily. And I think it just helped, like being in an academic setting. Um, I wasn't like at home on my couch. I was just felt like I was in the testing center. I think that really helped for learning, especially if you're doing it over summer break or if you're doing it in the middle of your coursework. Maybe you could start waking up like a consistent time early in the morning where you'd always have, you know, 2, 3 hours before class that you know that you'll do it. Um, I'm a morning person, so that's what I would prefer. I just think it's a little bit easier. Like I just finished taking like a boards exam for dental school. Um, so I did this for that of like waking up early. That way I know like if I have to stay late at school, if I have some sort of commitment come up, if friends want to go do something, then I know I've at least gotten my like dedicated study time in the morning and I wouldn't be sacrificing it in the afternoon. So I think that was huge. And then lastly, don't get discouraged. Um, Obviously there's a lot of information, so maybe your first couple of practice tests, your scores are really low. I'm you know, it's very performance based, so you're going to see your scores over and over. It's important to know it's a marathon, not a sprint. So if it takes you a while to kind of pick up, that's totally okay. You can always move your test date back, and then you can always retake it. So um, I know it's like it's kind of hard to go and tell people, everyone's going to know that you're taking this test, and so to get a result that you're not proud of is hard, but um, people that get into dental school, they don't always get their perfect DAT score right away. Um, if my classmate tells me, hey, I got a 22, I'm not going to say, well, was it your first time taking it? Was your second time taking it? A lot of times these tests, they're a way to show that you're dedicated. So, um, you know, yes, smart people are naturally going to get good scores, but also people that put in the time are going to get good scores too. So don't be afraid if you don't get a good score the first time, definitely retake it. Um, it's when I applied, you don't send like every DAT score, you just send your best. I think that's true of most schools still. So you don't need to worry about like if they're going to average it or stuff like that. And then lastly, I just put in a little plug for Chapep. I'm assuming you guys have discussed it before. Okay. I just wanted to make sure there's a Chapep for dental school as well. Um, yeah, if you get in, you get a guaranteed interview after completing the program. So I would highly recommend. All right. I went through that kind of fast. like I said, it's been a couple years since I took the DAT, so I'll try to be helpful with any questions you guys have. But yeah, I think are we okay to open it up for questions?
Yeah, totally. So for people who joined late, I did send out an attendance form if you guys could fill that out for us real fast. And you guys can either unmute or put questions in the chat. And yeah, I also have some questions sent in from previous members. So
Right.
I had one question. So, what resource did you use to study for the DAT, and like how long did you study for? And sorry, I just joined late, so I don't know if you already went over it or not.
That's all right. I use Boot Camp. I think it's pretty standard. A lot of people use it. Yeah, it's like one resource. You get everything you need with the video explanations and the questions. And I think it's pretty proven to like get good results. So I felt pretty comfortable using that. And I pretty much stuck to the 10-week study schedule that they have. I would modify a couple days here and there, but overall, I kind of keep it the same. I had like a family vacation kind of towards the end of it, so I just tacked on an extra 2 weeks and then scheduled my exam. So from start to finish, it was about 12 weeks.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm doing something similar actually right now. I'm doing the 12-week ones with the booster, so we'll see how
Okay,
that goes.
nice. Yeah, I think that's a good timeline. I don't think you want to drag it out much longer than that. You know, you want everything to kind of stay fresh as you're going, and you don't want to lose anything that you've learned in the beginning. But yeah, I think that's definitely doable with like the amount of content on the exam.
So you said that you started like preparing for the DAT and doing everything sooner. Did you complete your undergrad in 3 years then? Or-
Yeah, so um, it's kind of I never know how to go about it, but basically, when I was applying to start without my degree. I was an engineering student, so I would have had to like I had a whole nother year after like I would have been starting. So I would have started without a degree. But then luckily it worked out. I switched into the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences during my last semester and ended up graduating with an interdepartmental studies degree. Um, so if you know, that's definitely an option if you can finish earlier. But no one ever asked me like why I wasn't completing my fourth year or anything like that.
So you graduated like one semester early?
No, two
Oh,
semesters.
2 semesters. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, I think maybe one or two of my classmates doesn't have their bachelor's degree, so
Okay.
people still got in without it.
Okay. And then what engineering were you? Because I'm also currently an engineering major. So
Yeah, I was a biomedical engineering.
okay. Did that? That's actually what I'm doing right now.
Hmm.
And a lot of people have told me that like you could major in that, but it's like a pretty hard major, obviously, if you plan to go to dental school. So, like, what did your path look like with that?
Hmm. Um, I'm I honestly I'm really happy I did it. Like I thought it matched with my interests well, and it made me a unique applicant in that way. Um, it's not like being an engineer is going to make you like a super great dentist in like a specific area. Like you definitely have a better understanding of like material properties, some of the physics, you know, that we barely touch on when we like design a new crown or a new bridge or like how an implant can be loaded. But like, you know, I don't think there's anything specific that's like, oh yeah, Jeremiah's was an engineer, so he like really gets this stuff. Because they'll still tell you everything you need. Um, so I think it's a great major. Like you learn a lot, and there's still a lot of practical stuff in it. The biggest thing is just keeping up the GPA. I don't think they necessarily will see an engineering major, and think like their GPA, you know, maybe it's not as high because they had a heavy course load. I don't think they can really like quantify. how heavy everyone's coursework is, because maybe someone was a double major in liberal arts and sciences, and it's like, how do you compare the two? So my only thing would be, try to keep your GPA up as much as possible, and like don't let engineering be an excuse for it being lower, even though like yeah, it is a lot of work.
Okay, thank you. Just one more thing, sorry.
No,
But
you're
then
good.
you said you switched to like the College of Liberal Arts, so you didn't graduate with that engineering degree?
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
so I applied after my second year, and I found out right before finals of third year fall that I got in. So if I would have finished my engineering degree, I would have like had to defer my enrollment into dental school because I couldn't graduate early in engineering. But then when I switched to liberal arts and sciences, more coursework from high school counted. So then I got up to the
Mm,
120 semester hours
okay.
to get the liberal arts degree.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Hmm.
Okay, awesome. I'll ask some of the questions that were sent in. So why did you choose dental school?
Hmm. Yeah, so I was initially a pre-med student kind of up until I think second year fall, maybe even like into the spring. Um, but I mean that was kind of during COVID, so I was kind of seeing like how like just different healthcare professions were kind of able to adapt and treat their patients. I really like interacting with people, and um like working with my hands a lot. So I thought dentistry was kind of a good combination of a lot of those things. Um, Dentists really, I mean, when you're working in private practice, you are the person that gets to decide how patients are treated, what materials you use, what kinds of procedures you're comfortable doing in your office, what has to be sent out. Um, and I can't speak like too specifically about like what practicing as a family physician would look like or as a specialist. But I just kind of got the general sense of like there's a lot more like regulations and um, just a lot more like administration that kind of goes on with how you treat patients. Same thing with insurance, like what's insurance going to cover, which dentistry, there's still insurance, but a lot of dentists um, have a different like payment schedule set up. So it's really like you can treat how the you can treat what you want to treat, and you can also just provide better services for patients based off what they would like. So I thought that was really cool to just have like that kind of ownership over care. Um, and I liked the how fast it was. Of just, you could do so many procedures in a day. You see a lot of people. So I thought that was pretty exciting. I don't know how much people have shadowed, but like if you've been growing up to the dentist pops in the room for 30 seconds and leaves, and it's like, what do they even do? But when you shadow, it's really cool because then you get to see like why they're so busy, why they're only in the room for 30 seconds because they're bouncing between five different patients at the same time. They're going to go do this filling, and then, while the anesthetic's kicking in, then they're leaving that room to go finish the root canal, and then they're going to go do their hygiene checks. So I just thought that was really cool as I was shadowing of just kind of the fast-paced environment. And every dentist that I shadowed loved their job, which I thought was really cool to see. Um, yeah, they couldn't say enough about how happy they were that they did it. So I hope I'm not trying to like discourage anyone from being pre-med. I think depending on what you do, obviously there's a lot of great options in medicine as well. But for me, I thought dentistry was a little bit better fit of how I wanted to treat patients and um, yeah, just kind of what I generally like to do.
That kind of goes into
Um,
the next question of how did you get shadowing opportunities?
mhm. Yeah, so my dentist back home was helpful in a sense, but I also wasn't home very much, so I couldn't rely on him too much. And I was honestly pretty desperate to get shadowing hours because, like I said, everything was kind of on a time crunch. So I just started cold calling dentists in the area. I think the pre-dental club had a list at the time. Hopefully they still have it of different dentists that you could shadow in the area. Um, so that was kind of a helpful start. The other thing I would recommend if you're gonna cold call people is you could look at the Iowa Dental website and see who the adjunct faculty members are. Basically, it's just like practicing dentists from the community that come in and teach a couple of days a week. So I mean, you wouldn't shadow them at the dental school, but you would at least know this person likes to teach, they like to be around students, um, and they have connections at the school, so that would be great um, to kind of get to know them and pick their brain because they're not making much by coming to the school to teach us. So they're doing it because they like doing it. So if they had someone following them around the office that they could also teach, I'm sure they would love it. So I think those would be two good places to start. And then also don't be afraid to ask, once you're with one of them, like I was really hoping to see, more ortho. Do you know who I could who I could ask to see more of that? And again, the dental world gets pretty small, so they're gonna know the town's orthodontist, or they're gonna know, which general dentist is comfortable doing, XYZ procedures in their office. So um, they're all in network together, and it's just a great way to make it a little bit easier on yourself, so you don't have to keep cold calling one after the other. Yeah, and I never had an office that was like upset that I asked. I mean, a couple of them were like, "No, we can't do this," but Uh, then I also had an orthodontist who I was never a patient of, like didn't know anyone who knew him, and he was more than willing to let me come in, and it was a great experience.
We actually just got one in the chat. Ishnoor's asking, who did you ask for letters of recommendation?
Let's see. I asked one dentist that I did most of my shadowing with, just because I felt like he had an idea of like where my interests were. I was like engaged while I was watching him. And then I had Dr. Holbrook wrote one. I was in the honors section for lab, and he was our lab leader or lab director. So I knew him a little bit through that. Oh, and then I had an engineering professor write one more. But I'd done well in her class, and then she just kind of was always super friendly when I saw her. So I thought to ask her, and she wrote a really nice letter for me.
Okay, and then what advice do you have for undergrads who don't know what healthcare path they want to go down yet?
Yeah. I would like don't be too worried like feeling like you're behind or anything. Um, like some people are just gonna know. Like a lot of my classmates knew they were gonna be a dentist in eighth grade. And like that's great. They were probably more prepared for dental school than I was. They didn't have the same stressors that I did of trying to figure it out. But um really like if you are able to set aside time, like you can always catch up. So don't be afraid to kind of keep exploring interest, I guess. That's what I'm getting at. Maybe you shadowed a couple dentists and you're starting to think, this isn't really for me. I don't really like what they're doing. It seems pretty boring. You know, be honest with yourself and just say it's okay to go shadow a physical therapist or go shadow a doctor in the hospital. Um, yeah, if you need to take gap years, totally fine. There's a lot of people in my class. Like one guy's 36, someone else is 29. Like it's a full range of ages, so it's not like you know you're not coming straight out of undergrad. Like, why are you applying? People have a lot of different perspectives. And I think a lot of the non-traditional students are really good at like patient management in a way that like me and a lot of my other classmates aren't. Um, so yeah, I think there's ways to kind of spin like whatever you're going through into like what makes you unique. So I think shadowing is probably the best way. Kind of see you're exploring. Um, like if you were to come to the dental school and see what the students do, it's like we're not doing the most fun stuff. Like our appointments are long. But if you can see someone that's been in practice for a while that would really give you a good gauge of what the profession is like. And sorry, I know I've been rambling a little bit, but the other thing is try to make decisions based off stuff you want to like values you want to have for your future. So I know like right now, like as I'm thinking about specializing, I'm wanting to do oral surgery and like doing a lot of hospital trauma, like sounds really fun. Like really, you know, seeing some patients that really need a lot of work. Like I can be there, just this idea of like being there in a critical time sounds really nice to me right now. I'm not married, I don't have kids. But if that's my focus for my residency and I pick somewhere with a lot of trauma and I get out and I'm married, I'm not going to want to be on call every night or, several nights a week to come do these procedures. So I think you have to find the balance of, like do something that sounds cool, but make sure it still sounds cool when you're 30, when you're 40, when you're 50. Because I don't think you want to like corner yourself in a career that sounds fun when you're 20, when you want it to last and be something you really enjoy in the long run.
I think that kind of goes into a question that I had, but what is your favorite part of dental school and what challenges do you face in dental school?
Yeah. One of the other things that was exciting for me about dental school is just being able to treat patients a little bit earlier. We don't have any required residencies. So your residency is kind of built into the 4 years of dental school. I'll brag on Iowa a little bit. Obviously, I'm biased, but during your first year, you see your first uh, patient for a cleaning. Second year, you do more cleanings, and then you start to do some small fillings. And then I'm in my third year now, and I'm in clinical 4 days a week. Um, and like I'm the one treating the patient. I have faculty that comes over. They'll come at the beginning of the appointment, say like, health is good. What are we doing today? Sounds good. Get started. And I can like put on my light for them to come over and help me when I need it. But it's not like the faculty is like standing watching me the whole appointment. Like I have to be confident in what I'm doing as I'm treating the patient. So I think, just getting that early clinical experience was cool. Um, it is also stressful. Granted, it's a tooth. Like it's not like anything major is gonna happen if something goes wrong. But if you're drilling the tooth down, you're removing enamel, dentin, like it is permanent. So there is definitely some stressors there. I think that's where a lot of my stress has been this year of, y- you know, it is one of my first times doing this and I don't want to mess up. And they give us the tools that we need to succeed. They don't just throw us in the deep water, but I think just, being confident has been a big um just like learning curve in patient management this year. Previously, I think like first year, the big transition was just really getting my hand skills up. From undergrad, I knew how to study well. I could get good scores on tests. But like replicating a tooth, um, if you guys have heard of waxing, but you have like a stump and then you slowly add wax to it and shape it to the form of a tooth. That was something I just wasn't good at. So the hand skills um, was a big challenge my first year. And I think compared to like medicine, or even PT school, like that's not really something you have to be good at. Like first year, I just felt like I have to be good at studying, but I also have to be good at art through a lot of this and my hand skills. So I think that's a unique challenge for dentistry.
And then one more question from the chat was, are you planning on staying in Iowa after graduation?
We'll see. I so I'm hoping to do an oral surgery residency, and it would be great if it were in Iowa. They have a really good program. Um, but after that, I'm not sure. Kind of depends on where it's needed. I think a lot of people typically go back home. It just kind of makes the most sense of, maybe there's a dentist you already know you want to work for. Maybe you're from a smaller community and, you have a lot of connections there already. So I guess I'm unsure. I probably won't long term, but we'll see.
Okay, looks like those are all of our questions. Thank you so much for today, Jeremiah. If anyone else
No
has any
problem.
questions, where can they reach out to you?
Yeah, feel free to email me with any questions. My email is just Jeremiah-Poppin at Eliwa. And I'd be happy to help if you have questions about um, like maybe a specific dentist you could shadow or just ways to get more involved in dentistry or I don't know, any like study resources or stuff like that. Just email me and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible.
Awesome. Thank you so much.